Sammy, you're involved in map collecting. How does map collecting compare to coin and currency collecting?
Well, first and foremost, it's a celebration of history. And what we found is that we found a decent amount of crossover between coin and currency collectors and maps. And since then, I've had a couple people approach me about asking to use maps for exhibits that they've used in coin shows to kind of help tell the story of a lot of these coins and notes and the history behind them. They didn't keep very good track as far as the production numbers as maps, because I mean, we deal in maps as far back as the late 1400s. So for one, they didn't really keep good records as to how many they made, and after that, how many have survived since then. A lot of the value is based on, well, of course there's rarity and condition, but also the importance of the map, or what does it show. So that adjusts the value, but for the most part, people can get beautiful maps that they love to hang in their homes. They use it to kind of, honor their ancestry, or celebrate places where they've been. And you can get basic maps of just about anywhere in the world for very reasonable prices. So this map is titled A Map of New France Containing Canada, Louisiana, and North America. It was made by Herman Mull, who is an English cartographer. It was made in the early 1700s, circa 1714. And it's a great little map because it shows what they believed much of North America to be, and it also kind of shows this belief that Europeans could claim vast amounts of land as their own, when really they know very little about it and have little control over it. So it shows some early British colonies labeled Carolina, Virginia. There's New York, New England. Also notes New Scotland, which I think few people are familiar with, and of course Newfoundland. The Great Lakes aren't depicted too accurately. You can see Lake Michigan kind of is on a diagonal. Lake Huron is oversized. Lake Superior has several false islands that were actually put in there by a French cartographer just to honor his wife and a duke that he was friends with. It shows the Mississippi to originate. It shows this large lake, but it was believed that it originated from the mountains of the west, or they were labeled the mountains of New Mexico, when in fact it originates upwards in upper Minnesota. There's also a false lake in the Carolina region, which is now Georgia, which appeared in maps for well over 100 years. And it also shows the route in which the Spanish Armada sails from Havana back to Spain. And this is kind of interesting because at this time period, you were kind of at the height of piracy. And this region was kind of known as, for lack of a better word, as the gauntlet. So the Spanish Armada would have to travel in between Florida and the Bahamas, and it was a great place for pirates to hide out and attack the Armada fleet as they were going back to Spain with all the riches from their gold and silver mines in Latin and Central America. So a very, very interesting map, lots of detail, lots of incorrect features going on. Of course, there's several forts, several Native American tribes listed throughout the map, several blank areas or areas where they're just guessing. And that's what a lot of cartography was at the time. It was a lot of guesswork based on information or sources that weren't always that accurate. One thing that's worth noting about this map is the arrogance of Europeans to claim vast amounts of land as their own. You can see this whole area is just labeled New France. And the French also tried to claim Louisiana. And one thing to note is that at this time, the French, they did have a couple outposts, a couple forts. They used much larger font when showing their forts to try and, make people believe that they were much more fortified than they really were. But in actuality, they had approximately about 4,000 troops throughout this entire area. And you compare that to the millions of Native Americans that roamed the area, and to just go out and say that this now belongs to France is quite arrogant, when much of the population that lives here would have never, most of them had never even seen a Frenchman before, and a lot of the French that were out there were terrified of them. So, you know, I guess a picture's worth 1,000 words, and in this case, the map kind of does that as well. And it kind of shows the belief and the arrogance of Europeans to lay claim to vast amounts of land without actually really controlling them. Value on this map is approximately, we actually haven't priced it out yet, but I would probably venture to say I'd price it about $650. This is a map published by James H. Colton from 1849. And it basically focuses on Captain Bonneville's adventures through the American West. The most notable adventurers in American history are Lewis and Clark. However, there were many more to follow, Captain Bonneville, Fremont being some of them. So it actually shows the route of his travels, where he started just north of Indian Territory and Missouri. Here's Iowa. This is all the Nebraska Territory. And it shows his route, following pretty much close to the Oregon Trail for much of the way, up towards Fort Walla Walla and through the Snake River to the Oregon coast. What it also shows is a severe lack of information, which I think is important. There's virtually no geographical detail in what is, called Upper or New California. There are locations of Native American tribes throughout. Some areas they note hunting grounds or where they tend to roam. But there is a good amount of detail in California, because as you may have realized when I noted it before, this map is from 1849. So there's a lot of detail in California, and it actually shows the gold region. It highlights it right near Sutter's Mill in Sacramento. The value of this map, we have it priced at $450. This is a nice map of northwestern America. It's a map of Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Montana. And the western states were constantly being chopped up and the boundaries changed, and counties start out as very large and then they would shrink over time. And this kind of shows a nice progression of that. Idaho is still a fairly new territory at the time, so it's all in one color. There's no differentiation in between counties. Same with Montana, and I believe this was still actually part of the Dakotas or Nebraska. But what this map also shows is it shows the route of a lot of explorers, and it includes Lewis and Clark Pass over here. And it also shows what a lot of people don't know about the states that they live in is where did the population begin and where did it grow from there. So in the initial part, people were settling along the coast of Oregon, and it kind of built from there, Oregon and Washington. So you can see lots of very small county lines. But then as you go just beyond the Cascades to the other side, to the eastern side, you have these large county lines. And what's really interesting, you have this area which is still just labeled unexplored. And so that's a really fun thing to find on a map from the 1860s, is that there's still parts of the continental United States that are regarded as unexplored land. This is a good example of a map that lots of national collectors or broken banknote collectors would enjoy, because it shows a lot of the earliest towns that sprouted in these new states or territories. And so, what fun to collect Oregon and Washington and have your collection of notes and then be able to point them out on a map from actually a time before many of those notes were printed, because like I said, this was 1860s. So kind of following after broken banknotes right at the beginning of a national currency system. There's also several Native American tribes listed throughout.
What kind of value?
This one I have priced at a whopping $85.